Welcome to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with a wide range of music personalities, from rock and roll Hall of Famers to Grammy winners and today's rising stars. Recorded in St. Louis, Missouri, now here's your host, Aaron Perlett of Atomic Junk Shop.
They are a much-heralded Americana band from my neck of the woods in Virginia, widely known for their annual Red Wing Roots Music Festival in the beautiful Shenandoah Valley, and they have an ambitious new record out called Sideways. They are Steel Wheels, hoping the name comes from the Stones album. And today I speak with Trent Wagler of the band here on the Loadout Music Podcast. Trent, thanks for being with us, man.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
All right, so the name, I got to ask, when your publicist first came to me, I was like, is that named from the Stones album, or where does the name come from?
We have had people say worst Rolling Stones cover band ever in response to our band. I have to admit that wasn't the impetus for it. We were aware of the Rolling Stones album by the same name. I think for us, I mean, there's probably plenty of bands like this, but it kind of says something about the genesis of our band that we kind of needed a name before we realized even what we were doing or how long that name would stay with us. We had a gig first, and then we were like, oh shit, we need to come up with a name, and so at the time it was Trent Wagler and the Steel Wheels. That was sort of the least offensive name we could come up with, and we knew we were going to be in that sort of Americana vein. Whether it's railroads or it's in our neck of the woods, it's buggy wheels, the Amish and Old Order buggies that have steel wheels around the wood rims, and some of us in the band had some Mennonite heritage, and so it was a little tip of the cap to the steel wheels on the old buggies there. And so even though that's kind of a deep cut, or you have to really know the band to understand that. I don't mind the comparison to the Stones in the sense, not that we are doing a load of Rolling Stones songs. We've played Sweet Virginia a few times, but yeah, it's a great band that took a lot from traditional blues and took and kind of made it their own. And I feel like even though we're not in that exact same vein, we take from old time music and a little bit of bluegrass and make it our own. And so if people feel like we're in that same vein, I'm happy to let them think that as well.
Yeah, it wouldn't suck to be compared to the Stones in any way.
Yeah,
Obviously,
exactly.
you guys are a very different band. So you guys were initially founded in 2005 as an all acoustic string band, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were. Early days, it was literally one microphone and singing and playing into it. We really loved what we could squeeze out of all acoustic everything, and we followed that through for quite a while. We were busking on like busking at the local ice cream shop in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and just like enjoyed the real grassroots and organic feel of just the wood and strings, and being together and singing together.
Yeah. By the way, I must note that I bought my engagement ring from a jewelry shop, James McCone Jewelers.
Oh yeah,
in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So yeah, I need to throw that in there.
That's shout out to James McCone. I mean, that is an institution in downtown Harrisonburg. I know it very well.
He is an institution, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting in listening to your music. There's a very clear, I feel like, progression as you go from album to album. So whether it's like Lay Down, Lay Low, or While as we came here to the newest record, Over the Trees to Sideway, I feel like particularly with the new record, I want to get into that in greater detail because there's an interesting backstory, but I feel like you've slowly adopted a more contemporary feel as you guys have evolved musically.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think that what is coming through, it's almost like as you continue to develop as a band, for us, I've felt like it's you're squeezing out every influence that you've had over the years, over time. And I grew up in the 90s and really had a lot of grunge and alternative influences. At that time, I was really into, I mean, I got to play in some jam bands, and that's kind of the way I found my way in the back door of, like, first hearing the pizza tapes and seeing Garcia and Grisman and Tony Rice. That's where I found my way into the back door of, like, acoustic music and traditional music. And so then being in Virginia, getting to see Doc Watson play, that was a time when it just, like, I went down that rabbit hole and I really wanted to sound and feel as timeless as possible. And I think, really inspired by Gillian Welch and inspired by people who were making music that sounded like it could have been from the 1800s, or it could have been from 2005. And that is still something I'm intrigued by. But as we've sort of, you know, I think the pandemic allowed us to sort of take any boundaries away from the sound that we were making, and we were just ready to explore and not be so precious with, like, ooh, but does this sound like the Steel Wheels, and kind of get stuck in your own uh, uh, mythology maybe, and instead just be like, I love this. Let's just search this sound out, and let's have fun and enjoy exploration. And so, yeah, I would really credit especially Jeremy Darrow and Kevin Garcia, our bass player, and our drummer and percussionist. That rhythm section, especially in this new record, really has allowed us also to, you know, get out of our own way. And sometimes they're creating such a huge bed of bass and drums that it's like, you know what, we don't have to have a mandolin in here chopping off time, because we have a great snare drum. We've got a great, like, we're allowing it to be a rock and roll sound. And Jay, who does play the mandolin whenever you hear one on our music, is a great electric guitar player, and he's been able to explore and get into that side of his. He played in some metal bands back in the day, and so it's been fun for him to explore that side of himself as a musician. And so I think, we've seen our band as like a lifetime sort of, like, we're exploring our sound, and we hope that our audience comes with us. Whereas I think, sometimes you can get stuck, or I feel like we could get in our own way if we're like, no, 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 the Steel Wheels have these boundaries. We got to stay in this lane. We've just been here to explore. And there's certainly things where we're like, no, 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 that's a bridge too far. but for us, it's the way you keep a band alive, is just like, keep exploring and keep finding things that inspire you. And who knows? I mean, maybe we'll strip it down in the future sometime and do something really acoustic again, just to kind of explore in that way. There is certainly no lack of banjo and fiddle on this new music as well. It just is in these different beds, and with these different tapestries around it, that hopefully open the music up, and you still can feel that Virginia sound within it. But also, yeah, I appreciate that comment. I think it's great. We're trying to push out into something more contemporary, and it's been really fun.
Of course, we're talking about the new record, Sideways. Let me ask you this. So, we both play music, and so we both know that building an audience is hard. I mean, it's really difficult. And especially, I live in a major metropolitan area that's maybe, within the 30 largest cities and metro areas in the US. You guys live near Harrisonburg, Virginia, where biggest thing going there is James Madison University, which, most of those kids are there 9 months a year and they're gone. They're might be from Northern Virginia or the Northeast. So how do you do that? How do you how do, you know, a group of guys from that area build an audience that has progressed to now you guys, we talked earlier, you're on tour right now. You're actually talking to me from your tour bus. Um, how do you do that? Because I mean, busking at the ice cream store in downtown is a lot different than maybe busking in front of a record store in New York City. So
Right.
talk about that, how you guys have built an audience, because you guys have built a nice little following.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways we benefited from not knowing what we didn't know to start, and it was just for the love of getting to play that, like, in those early years, we were playing anywhere we could. And so, yeah, we would busk, we would play farmers markets, we would get, the random wedding gig, and we just weren't in the practice of saying no to anything. And so we were playing every benefit concert, everything. And we obviously had to, once we wanted to quit our day jobs and get out on the road and really try to make it work financially, there's a load of things when it becomes a business that you have to kind of shift a little bit. But I think for us, it was what you didn't realize at the time you were basically doing by playing every gig you could is you were creating a network. And, some of those random, I mean, you just never know what's going to lead to something. And I think you're right that in retrospect, had we been in Nashville or we had been in New York City, I mean, those weddings you're playing might have led to even bigger things. But for us, it was fantastic to be, it definitely like created the opportunities that when it came time for us to want to start a music festival,
Yeah.
it just made sense. We were ready. Our area was ready for a music festival. We weren't competing with like 20 other events that happen every year and are pulling on the same music audience. And we had at that point created enough of a like local and regional following that, and we partnered with the right people to start the event, that it was something that really swelled and really has enabled us to sort of feel like, hey, we've kind of put this city on the map in a sense, that there is at least some music scene that's happening here, and Red Wing is a big part of that, because once a year there's this festival that at least brings in whatever 5,000 people to the area to get to see some great music in the valley. And so I think, there's a lot of paths, and for us, we didn't go the route of moving to Nashville or moving to LA or wherever, whatever big city. And so I can't speak to how that route would go for a band, but for us, it was just, trying to control the things you can control, make your show the best you can, try to be good to the people that you partner with and you play for. And then it's a matter of just hustling and just playing every gig you can. And I mean, for us, that's the road, I think, to the sort of slow growth of like one show at a time, because it also, for us, it wasn't like we meet some big manager and we meet some record label and then the story gets, either you're going to fail big or you're going to grow big. For us, it's been that sort of keep the team tight and keep it moving and just don't stop playing, and keep the music vital and exciting for you. I think for us, we've also seen a lot of touring bands where they don't create a new album for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, and their show feels tired. If you've seen them at the same festival a couple years in a row and you're like, oh, you guys are still playing the exact same tunes. For us, if we do that, we start to feel like we're dying. And so having new material that you're working out and you're playing, that's important to us. And it also, I think, engenders, a sense of an audience that sees that, respects that, and wants to come back and see what's happening at this show.
Yeah, I know. We went into the studio last November, and our new album comes. We've had two singles come out, but it comes out in full. The end of this month, May 31st, and immediately upon exiting the studio, I was done with those songs and ready to write new
Yeah.
songs. I was just like, I need
Yeah.
some. I've been working on these. I need something fresh, and so I understand exactly what you say. what you're talking about. I do think it's important. You touched on Red Wing there. It's not just like a local yokel music festival. You guys have had Steve Earle, Old Crow, Robert Earl Keen, Lucinda Williams.
Yeah.
I believe this year Kurt Vile is going to be one of the headliners.
Yep.
Brent Cobb's playing there, who I absolutely just love.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, it's become significant. It's not, and it's not really near a major population. Probably Charlottesville might be the closest city population wise. It's pretty impressive. I mean, it's a great platform for you guys. I mean, I'm sure in the back of your mind, subconsciously, you're thinking, this is gonna be great. We're going to play alongside some great acts, but also just doing this from an entrepreneurial standpoint must be really exciting, and bringing this all together and seeing crowds that come to this event.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, there's no other way to put it that we saw this happening at other festivals, right? Like the first time I remember going to Merle Fest in North Carolina, that's such a good example of that. Of course, Merle Fest it was born out of Doc and Merle Watson, and has such a tie to the local culture. And I remember just being so touched that the very first set we played there was at a local middle school, and that the festival had this program that was like, we're going to bring our top artists are going to come in, and they're going to play for the local schools. And their Thursday, I think was the first day of the festival, at least at that time, all those middle schoolers also had a free ticket to come to the festival. And they were really trying to sort of make this music be accessible to local kids and schools. And I think that got us thinking. I mean, I remember bringing my daughter to one of those festivals, and her experience of seeing Doc Watson. It was one of the last years that he was at the festival. And I just was thinking, why can't we do this every year? Like, why can't we do this in the Shenandoah Valley? Why don't we have something like this? The kids are growing up, and this is just a part of every summer that they're experiencing music, and that they don't have to travel somewhere, but it's right in their backyard. And so that was the dream.
But
And
there's also no truth that Kevin Garcia had to stand 700 yards away because it was out of middle school, right? He was able to go. That's a lot, right? Total false.
Yeah, that is a lie. Yeah.
Just want to clear that up. I know there's
Yeah, right.
Got to just clear that up. Okay.
But the that was the initial dream, and all these other things now that, yeah, like obviously it was good for the band to think like, hey, every year we're going to be able to do a great Saturday night headline set. We can build our year around this being our biggest local gig. And we can bring in names that are bigger than us, and we can meet those people. We can, also play with some of those folks. We can also bring some of our best friends that we have toured with, that we want our local audience to see and to become fans of. And so it is all the best things about any festival, where fans come because they bought a ticket for Steve Earle, but they go away loving the Steel Wheels, or they go away loving whatever band they'd never heard of. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been way beyond our expectations at this point. We never tire of hearing people saying we build our summer schedule around the dates of Red Wing because it's become a part of our family, or it's become a part of our just what we need each year. And so, at this point, we see it as being bigger than us, and it's almost like this river we get to sort of, jump into each summer and just have a nice float through, while it is also a lot of work. but it's a joy. And there's been so many connections that have come through it. And I think it continues to be inspiring, and it inspires me to think like, what else could we do? What else can we build? We've had a Red Wing Academy that started to build up over the years of kids who are actually playing music in kind of a camp setting. The week before, Eric Brubaker, our fiddle player, has been the most sort of leader of that charge, and just this year actually started a 501c3 as like a foundation, so people can donate to scholarships for kids, because we really want that to be a part of the mission. And so it's been fun to also, like you said, being a part of any community. It doesn't matter if it's a big city or a small rural community. And for us, Harrisonburg has been home. It's also really nice to feel connected to a place. And whether it's a huge metropolitan area or not, there's not a ton of venues, not a ton of festivals. There is this sense of like, this is our home. We want to be there for the people that we are, that are our neighbors. And hopefully by bringing music to the Valley every year, that helps to build something. And I think we're only beginning to see those kids who have grown up in that setting. Like, I hope, like the day I think we see, one of those kids who grew up playing at Red Wing Academy on the main stage in their own band that they created years later, and they're touring around the country. That will be a new sense of success, of like really seeing that full cycle of the artistic and creative endeavor coming back to us.
Yeah, and I have a good friend who just built a house on the Shenandoah River just north of Harrisonburg, so I'm going to make sure that he is there.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the new record a little bit, because I know there was some I guess sadness, for lack of a better word, that kind of inspired Sideways to a degree. And I can relate to one of these issues in that I know that Eric Brubaker lost his young daughter. I have had the exact same thing happen to me, so I understand what that's like. I know that you had a child that was facing some mental health challenges, but those two events I know played had some inspirational roles in the new record. So talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, part of just going through whatever life has to throw at you is that you're, as you also talked about, writing new music and writing songs, you're always experiencing something new. And I think those personal tragedies or struggles and difficulties are always going to be, like when you're really quiet with yourself and you're really trying to dig into, what do I have to write about? For me, at least, that's what I am going to find myself going towards, even when I'm not consciously trying to. It's not like I didn't sit down and say I'm going to write about this topic. It's just that when I'm writing a song, I'm trying to go into that deepest sort of quiet place, and whatever is stirring is going to be the thing that I'm writing towards. And so oftentimes for me, it was after the fact that I'm kind of looking at these songs and saying, oh, these are all about this. And of course, with the backdrop of the pandemic, this idea of being knocked sideways and being a little off kilter just felt like it also fit for a lot of people. And that, I know that for some, maybe the term trauma and the conversation around trauma is overused, or maybe it's a buzzword. But I also think that when we continue to look around and talk about unprecedented times on top of unprecedented times on top of unprecedented times, we all are sort of still feeling on our back foot a little bit. And so I think while a lot of these songs had to do with these specific and difficult struggles of mine, or of watching my fiddle player and good buddy Eric dealing with his loss and his family, it was sort of a little snapshot of our own that was inspired by that, but also reflecting on the larger climate of just a culture that feels like we're all a little bit anxious and a little bit struggling. And so hopefully there's a universal sense to a lot of these songs, but it was a tough few years. And so you find that in very overt and specific ways, and in sometimes a little more universal ways in pretty much all the songs that I wrote for this one.
And how does that work within the band? Do you write all the music, and then the band collectively kind of builds out parts? How do you guys, your process typically work?
Yeah, I mean, I write probably 90% of the songs, and that's usually music and lyrics. If there's been lyrics thus far, pretty much I've written 100% of the lyrics over the years. We have like on this record, we have a couple instrumentals that Eric wrote, some great tunes. And there have been some collaborative writing ventures where either one of the guys in the band has written an instrumental and then I write lyrics to it. We've done that in several cases. But for this record, it was pretty much I wrote the songs, the basic sort of structure of the songs, and then I handed it over to the band. And from there, yeah, the arrangement gets fleshed out. I mean, there's so many times where it can sound like a completely different beast by the end, but I usually hand them sort of the basics of the melody, the lyrics, and we go from there, except for the instrumentals, in which that's usually comes from whomever. And in this case, Eric wrote these fiddle tunes that were just too gorgeous to not put on the album.
Yeah, we have a very similar process in Atomic in that I'm not interested in telling our percussionist how to build a drum. Our
Right.
bass player where to come in, where to drop. And I feel like, if I can bring kind of the basic composition and melody, and we tend to almost work it out in real time, we'll just start playing it and they'll know what key I'm in and be able to kind of pick up parts. And then whatever that first time is, probably not we're going to be three times later.
Yeah.
But we'll slowly sit there and just kind of massage it through until we have something that we start to like. And then it's the next time around, building
Right.
upon, within a couple weeks, we've got something we're like, all right, this is something we have the bones constructed and we understand where it's going. It sounds like you guys have a pretty similar process.
For sure. And, Eric and Jay and I have been playing together since the very beginning. And they are great singers. There's always lots of harmonies. And usually when I'm writing something, I can kind of hear in my head, oh, there's going to be a lot of layered vocals here. And we read each other pretty well on that. During the pandemic, we did a lot because Eric and I are the only two who still live locally. And with the pandemic, everybody was staying away from each other anyway. We did a lot of recording from our own home studios, sending files back and forth. And we've actually continued to use that as a really fun demo process where, I'll just send whatever my vocal and my one instrument, usually a banjo or a guitar, and I'll send that to Kevin, who's our drummer, but also I'll put it to a click track. He'll do his drum track or whatever he's doing percussion wise, and then send that out to everybody else. And then all of a sudden you've got, Jeremy adding his bass line, Jay adding whatever he decides to add. Sometimes he's stacking like 3 vocal lines, and Eric might do a whole strings part. And so we'll get a good demo just of like first ideas. But it's interesting because we also, like you said, they're very adept. If I just stood up and said, this one's in A, let's go, everybody can jump in. But it's been an interesting new process that was really because of the pandemic, where we all just kind of go to our own, home studio scene and are able to put together something that would never have happened otherwise, because it's everybody with their first idea and no other input. Nobody's saying, oh, don't do that, which you can sometimes get to when you're in the studio together. And in some ways it's been really fun, because even if it's ideas we don't end up using, it kind of shows you, okay, this is where this guy's head is at. He wants to add this like Marshall Stack electric guitar solo in this point. I never heard that coming, or whatever it might be. And that was a part of the exploration process. You have to break a few eggs, you have to kind of go a little off the rails before you can really hone in what is the sound that we're going for right now. And in some ways that process has helped us get there, I think.
Shane, the boys started big time in you and moved to the huge metropolis of Manassas.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they got to take a leg up.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, Trent, what else can we expect? I know you guys you're about to head out on the road. How many dates you plan on doing? What does the road schedule like for the next or foreseeable future?
We're on the road for about we got like 10 shows here back to back for the next week and a half, and then we take a few days off and then have a couple more shows. Pretty much that leads us right into Red Wing, because as I mentioned, we have to be there a full week early. for the Red Wing Academy, and we help out with that for the week ahead of it. But then, yeah, we got a lot of summer dates too in July, August, all the way, some festivals in September and October. We're playing a lot of shows east throughout the rest of the year. We're not going to make it to the West Coast, but we're really pumped to be spending a lot of time in and out of the Midwest. I know you're in St. Louis, and we're coming through there in the next week, and can't wait to see. I mean, I grew up, sort of split my childhood in Indiana and in Kansas, and so I know the Midwest well before I settled in Virginia, and that really became home. So it's always fun to get to go across the country, and I love getting to play, St. Louis, Kansas City. We're playing Wichita tomorrow night. There's some cities there that they're can't miss cities for me. So I'm excited to get to play Midwest dates, as well as a bunch of stuff up in New York and Connecticut, and then down in Asheville, North Carolina, some of our favorite gigs. So we're all over the place if people want to check out the calendar. And yeah, we're working on new music right now. I've got a lot of writing I'm doing. We're going to be releasing a few surprise covers on some streaming platforms. So we're still working behind the scenes. We just released our album in February, but like you said, you're always kind of cooking up the next thing. So yeah, I'm excited. We had some time off, and we're ready to hit the road and play some music.
Trent Wagler, Steel Wheels, great to hear from you. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Loadout Music Podcast. It's been a real joy having you on.
Thanks for having me. Good to meet you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Loadout Music Podcast, hosted by Atomic Junkshot frontman Aaron Perlett. Find all of our episodes and more at loadoutmusic.com.